Good morning everybody. I welcome you all to another interesting episode of EDUSAT. Today's topic is a letter to God, which is a part of your syllabus of Standard 10th English. The story is a very interesting one, but let me tell you, the essence of this story is simply more and more intriguing or more and more interesting in a way that it instills a deep faith in God. All of you would be praying to God daily. Here also, a poor farmer instills a deep faith in God and see what he gets and how he gets. Let's dive into the details of the chapter. Now, before we go into the chapter details, let's know a few lines about the writer. The writer of this chapter is Gregorio Lopez y Fuentes. He was a Mexican novelist, poet, and journalist. He was one of the leading chroniclers of the Mexican Revolution. This is all about the author. Now, this is a short gist or the detailed gist of the chapter. I want you all to pay attention because if you don't pay attention, you will not be able to understand the chapter which we are going to discuss. So, A Letter to God is a story written by G.L. Fuentes, which shows the belief of a poor and not so clever-minded farmer. What is the name of the farmer? The name of the farmer is Lencho. Lencho was poor, but he was a dedicated farmer. Moreover, Lencho was hoping for a good harvest. But unfortunately, because of his bad luck, a hailstorm came all of a sudden and destroyed all his crops and harvest completely. This broke Lencho's heart. However, he had a strong faith in God. So, what do we know about Lencho, children? He was a very dedicated farmer. He had put in all his efforts to create a wonderful harvest, but he was heartbroken or very disappointed of the fact that after his harvest was complete, a big hailstorm came, and because of which he could not harvest his crops as he desired. Okay? Now, moving on to the next slide. Lencho, in spite of being a farmer, knew how to read and write. He was a literate man. He knew how to read and write. Due to his faith in God, he was certain that God will definitely help him in some way or the other. So, he decided to write a letter to God while addressing his economical concerns to him. So, children, in the first two slides, what do we see? We learn about Lencho. He was a farmer. He had all his wishes in his crop or harvest that he had planted. Moreover, he was heartbroken because of a hailstorm that had come. He could not do anything about it, but Lencho, being a literate man, addressed all his concerns to God by putting it down in the form of a letter. Look at the next slide. What does he do? He writes a letter to God. What does he write in this letter? In the letter to God, he requested God to send him 100 pesos to harvest his fields again and save his family from starvation. Soon he wrote the letter and went to the post office. He placed a stamp upon the letter to God and dropped it in the mailbox. So, what did Lencho do? After Lencho started thinking about what he could do to improve his situation, he was a simple farmer after all, but he had a faith in God, an unshakable and unwavering faith in God. So, what he did was, he put down all his problems in the form of a letter. He could not reap his harvest because of the fact that a hailstorm had destroyed all his crops. So, in the letter he says, "Dear God, please send 100 pesos to me so that I can harvest my fields once more. Otherwise, my children and wife will go hungry and they will all suffer from starvation." Now, what happens in the next slide? When the postman takes out the letter from the post box, He laughs with a full heart. After reading it, he immediately rushes to the postmaster and shows him this weird letter. The postmaster reads the letter but laughs out aloud too, because he noticed that the letter was addressed to God. However, he was also moved by the belief of the farmer with which the letter was written to God. He praised the poor farmer's unquestionable faith in God and decided to help him. So, what Lencho did was he posted the letter. Naturally, when a letter is posted into a post box, the postman comes to collect it. After he collected the letter, the postman saw this weird letter. It was addressed not to a person but directly to God. Since it appeared very funny to him, he started laughing. And then he went back to the post office and showed the letter to the postmaster. The postman and the postmaster had a good hearty laugh, because never in their lifetimes had they received such a weird letter that was addressed to God. But because of the fact that Lencho was simple and devout, and he had an unquestionable, unwavering and unshakable faith in God and had stated all his economical concerns in the letter, the employees of the post office along with the postmaster decided to help him out. Let's see what happens next. Soon he asked the employees of the post office to contribute some money as charity and also gave a part of his salary, so that Lencho's faith in God is not broken. However, the money collected was a little less than what Lencho had requested from God. The postmaster then put all the money collected in an envelope and addressed it to the poor farmer Lencho. So, what do we see in this particular slide? After the employees of the post office and the postmaster saw how Lencho was suffering, and what they did was, in amongst themselves they had a small meeting. They decided that they should help Lencho. How should they help Lencho? The postmaster gave a part of his salary as charity and also urged other employees of the post office to collect some money and give that as a charitable contribution to Lencho. But the money that they had collected was less than 100 pesos that Lencho wanted. Now, what happens? The very next Sunday, Lencho went to the post office to check if there was a letter for him. The postmaster politely handed over the letter to him. Lencho was not so surprised at all to see the letter with money inside the envelope. So, what happens? Lencho, knowingly that he had posted a letter to God, went back to the post office the very next Sunday. He had full faith that God would send him money in some way or the other. So, when he went to the post office and asked if there was a letter addressed to him, the postmaster said that indeed there was a letter and put forward the envelope that contained the money that they had collected in the form of charity. And Lencho, he was not at all surprised when he saw the envelope, and when he opened the envelope and saw money in it, then also he did not express any kind of surprise or astonishment. Now, what happens? Let's see next. He excitedly opened the envelope to count the money, but became very angry when he saw that there was only 70 pesos in it. He was sure that God could have never made such a blunder. He instantly went to the window to ask for paper and ink and wrote another letter to God and dropped it into the mailbox or the letter box. So, what do we see in this particular slide? After Lencho received the money in the envelope, he did not express any form of surprise or astonishment. He simply opened the envelope and started counting the money that was inside it. Much to his surprise, he found it that the money that was in the envelope was much less than what he had expected. And angrily he started asking the postmaster to hand over to him a piece of paper and ink so that he could write another letter to God. After he had finished writing the letter, he dropped the letter into the mailbox once again. Now, let us see what happens in the subsequent slide. When Lencho left the place, the postmaster opened and read his letter immediately. What was in it? Lencho had raised a complaint to God that he had initially requested 100 pesos, but he was upset to find 70 pesos only. Now, what do we see here? Lencho had asked for a particular sum of money. If you remember the previous slide, Lencho had asked for 100 pesos. But the postmaster and the employees of the post office had collected amongst them an amount of 70 pesos and put it in the envelope and said that it was a gift from God to Lencho and handed him over the envelope. Immediately when Lencho opened the envelope, he was disappointed. He was very angry. He wrote another letter to God and handed it over to the postmaster. Now, what was written in that next letter? It was stated that, "Dear God, I had asked you for 100 pesos so that I can work in my fields once more and sow a harvest and reap it in my time. But what have you done? You have only given me 70 pesos instead of 100 pesos. Okay? Moreover, he criticized the post office employees and felt that they must have stolen the remaining 30 pesos from the envelope. He requested God to send him the rest of the money since he was in urgent need of it. So, what do we see? Lencho, who was a devout farmer and who had an unshakable faith in God, had asked him for 100 pesos, and he was fully confident of the fact that God would also grant him 100 pesos so that he could continue his work in the farm and his family would not die of starvation. But much to his chagrin and disappointment, he saw that God had granted him only 70 pesos. So, what he did was, he started writing another letter to God in which he stated that the employees of the post office were corrupt people. Why were they corrupt people? Because he believed that God had sent him 100 pesos, but the people in the post office were so cunning that they had stolen 30 pesos out of it, as a result of which he had only got 70 pesos, which was not enough for him to do his work at the farm. So, he was very disappointed. What more could he do? He could not find any other way. He is expressing his anger and disgust on the post office employees. He knows that God will never ever turn away a devout farmer like him. But at the same time, he is exceedingly disgusted with the employees of the post office whom he thinks have stolen 30 pesos from the envelope in which God had sent him around 100 pesos. Now, what do we see in this particular slide? After seeing all the slides, children, what do we analyze? Lencho, even though he was a devout farmer and a literate man, has a faith in God which cannot be broken down. He suspects the post office employees instead. He believes that God had granted him 100 pesos, but these people are thieves and corrupt, and that they have stolen 30 pesos from him, because of which only 70 pesos are remaining in the envelope. So, he is very heartbroken, he is very disgusted, and at the same time he is very worried about the fact that how will he continue his work so that his family will not die of starvation. So, we have discussed about Lencho and his feelings. Such a simple, devout farmer, such was his faith in God that instead of thinking how he could get 100 pesos from God or 70 pesos that he had asked for, how did this strange thing happen? Instead of thinking that, he was busy blaming the post office employees. Now, let us move on to the next slide. However, he requested God again in his subsequent letter not to send the money through the mail. Why? Because Lencho thought that the post office employees were a bunch of crooks who might have stolen the remaining money from the envelope. Now, as I told you in the slides that Lencho was a very simple man. He was literate, but at the same time he was a simple farmer. He was devout. He had faith in God. So, instead of analyzing the fact how strangely 70 pesos were sent to him in an envelope, he believed that God had sent him absolutely the correct amount that he wanted, that was 100 pesos. But these employees at the post office were crooks, thugs and thieves, and they had stolen away 30 pesos, and as a result of which he had only received 70 pesos. And that he sent God a letter in which he also stated that he was in urgent need of money and that God should make sure that he receives the entire amount for his harvest. So, let us see what happens next. Now children, after I gave you a brief summary of the chapter, I am sure you would have all understood the fact how simple Lencho was, how devout Lencho was, how his faith in God made him blind to the fact that somebody receiving an amount of 70 pesos out of thin air is unbelievable. But instead of that, he starts blaming the employees of the post office that they were crooks and thieves and had stolen away an amount from which he could have done his farm work. Okay? Now, I am sure all of you would have understood the gist of the story. We will move on to another important aspect, which is difficult word meanings from the chapter. Now, children, I am sure all of you would be having a copy and a pencil with you. These are difficult words which I want to make sure that you understand. Okay. So, what is the first word? Entire. What does entire mean? Whole and complete. What is the second word? The second word is valley. What is a valley? It is a low area between hills. Children, please make it a point to note down the difficult words so that when you are going through to the text, you will not have any problems in understanding the chapter. What do you mean by crest? Crest means the topmost part or the highest part. What do you mean by ripe? Ripe means mature and ready for harvesting. What does corn mean? You heard that Lencho was harvesting corn. What does corn mean? Corn means grain and cereal. What does downpour mean? Downpour means heavy rainfall. Children, I am sure all of you would be knowing about the difficult words. We discussed that in the previous slide. In this slide also, there are certain difficult words of which you should know the meanings. Now, what is the first word? The first word is shower. What does it mean? It means light rain or a sprinkle. Intimately. What does the word intimately mean? The word intimately means closely, in a detailed manner. What does northeast mean? It is a direction between north and east. What does supper mean? Supper means an evening meal or dinner. What does willing mean? Willing means ready or eager. What does field mean? Field means open land for farming or an agricultural area. Now, there are certain difficult words that you should be aware of. Let's look into this slide. Predicted. What does predicted mean? Foretold or anticipated. What do drops mean? small amounts of liquid or droplets. Mountains of clouds. What do they mean? Huge clusters of clouds. Approaching, what does it mean? Somebody coming nearer and nearer. Fresh, what does it mean? New. Pleasure, what does it mean? Enjoyment and delight. Now, let us look at a few other words. Exclaimed, what does exclaimed mean? It means shouted out or declared. Coins, what do coins mean? Metallic currency or pieces of money. Now, what does a satisfied expression mean? It means a contented look. What does the word draped mean? It means covered or enveloped. What does the word hailstone mean? The word hailstone means pellets of frozen rain, ice balls, etc. What does the word resemble mean? Look like. It means look like. Now, let us analyze a few more interesting words. What does the word exposing mean? It means revealing or showing. What does the word frozen pearls mean? It means reference to hailstones, icy beads. What does the word clag mean? It means infestation of an epidemic. What does the word locust mean? It means a grasshopper-like insect that can devastate crops. What does sadness mean? Sadness means sorrow and unhappiness. What does destroyed mean? It means ruined and devastated. Now, these are a few other difficult words. What does sorrowful mean? Full of sadness and mournful. What does the word comprehension mean? It means understanding. What does the word solitary mean? It means alone and isolated. What does the word soul mean? It means spirit. What does the word valley mean? It refers to a low-lying area between hills. Now, what does the word conscience mean? The word conscience means moral sense or an inner guide. What does the word ox mean? It means a strong and hard-working animal, often used metaphorically. What does the word daybreak mean? It means dawn or early morning. What does the word envelope mean? It means paper, container or a letter cover. What does the word troubled mean? It means worried and concerned. What does the word post office mean? Place for mailing and receiving letters. Children, please make sure that whenever I am dictating or teaching you about such meanings, you write them down. Now, these are few more difficult words. Mailbox, it is a container for depositing outgoing mail. Carrier, professional life. Postmaster, head of the post office. Stamp, adhesive label indicating postage and payment. And laughing heartily, it means genuine amusement. Few more words like amiable, which means friendly and pleasant. Hope, which means expectation and aspiration. Sow, which means planting seeds and cultivating. Hailstorm, storm with hail, ice storms. Hungry, in need of food and starving. Employee, worker or staff member. Now, fat, large in size. Upset, distressed or bothered. Loss, the act of losing something. Fellow, man. Faith, which means trust or belief. Correspondence, which means communication and exchange of letters. Now, shake, what does it mean? To unsettle. Goodwill, it means kindness. Resolution, it means decision. Salary, it means payment for work. Charity, it means benevolence or an act of giving. Envelope, it means paper cover for letters. So, mistake, confidence, deed and signature, what do they mean? Signature means sign, contented means satisfaction, deed means act, mistake means error, and denied means refused or declined. Now, in this particular slide, you need to know two main meanings, which is affix, that is attached, effort, that is attempt, and brow, that is forehead. So, children, I am sure you would have all understood. In the next part, we will discuss important question answers that you need to know about this particular chapter. Wish you all a pleasant day. Thank you.